Hello and welcome to the Navy Blue Corner. I'm Ian, joined as always by my good mate Lockie. And wow, it is crazy how much can change in such a short period of time. And it is wild how much one win can change the mood around the place. The Blues have defeated Geelong by 18 points. We are here to go through it all of the big talking points out of that win. And of course, previewing our big upcoming clash against Adelaide. But Lockie, mate, how are you and how good was that win against Geelong?
Such a beautiful sport, isn't it? Where we were, where you and I were mentally 3 weeks ago to now jumping on here in the yard full of beans, full of excitement. Yeah, fantastic win.
Yeah, and I think it's crazy because so many other supporters will be saying, oh, Carlton went too early, being upset with how things were. But for the most part, everything that we were critical of felt incredibly valid to a degree, is still somewhat valid at this point. We have only really beaten one good team in Geelong, but to do it in that fashion was massive. And hopefully this can start to push our season forward. But yes, it is wild just how quickly things begin to change. And as bad as it looked a few weeks ago, now the optimism and hope has started to come back. We definitely needed that win as fans just to get that hope back in positivity towards this season. But let's kick off where we did on our last midweek episode. And that's the main positives, the main key takeaways from this game, Lockie. What was it for you?
I could probably spend an hour talking about all the positives. Like there was so many individual performances, players that stood up when they needed to, some that probably had their best game for the club. But I think if I had to pick just my main one, it would be how hard the Cats came at us in the fourth quarter. And if you think about how this season has gone, we haven't really held up in one of those times yet. And we did.
No, I mean, it's a massive point. How were you feeling throughout each quarter break? And then I guess leading to that point in that last quarter where all of a sudden they start to get the run on, it goes to a couple of goals. How were you sort of feeling throughout? Were you confident because of the last few weeks, or were you worried knowing what we had seen in the early rounds this year?
I feel like I was feeling pretty confident about this game in general, just from a delusional, optimistic sense. Quarter by quarter, I think it was late in the fourth, they scored one, and that was annoying going into quarter time where it felt like we were more like we should have had a bigger lead than we did. Going into 3/4 time, I think I was feeling really confident. Like I think it might have been a 28-ish point lead, but the nerves, like once they kicked those few goals and got it back to something like 10 points. I mean, all you have to do is think back to the first 4 games of the season, which really, God, like the Collingwood game feels like so long ago, but it wasn't. Like
it feels like a game from last season, to be honest, in my mind now. It's I've almost separated that entire first few rounds from what is in my brain going forward. Probably a good thing as well.
100%. 100%. That's how I feel too. But then it's also still fresh enough that those wounds like aren't fully healed. So it was like, yeah, you could see the scenario where we do get overrun in that quarter, and we're sitting here saying, has anything really changed? But alas.
Yeah, I mean, I was weirdly calm quarter time throughout that first quarter. Most calm I've watched a game of football. I was being able to just settle in my seat and try to watch the defensive structure and other components where I wasn't as focused on the ball and where that was in each and every moment, really riding them. Clearly, I was late when it got into the heat of the battle. But yeah, like you, I wasn't super, super nervous at each change. It was more, I think, my perspective in I'm up and about, but I'm excited to see what we do in these situations rather than, oh no, they're going to bottle this. And even when it got really bad in that last quarter, they kicked a few goals and it felt like this is that moment we've seen so many times where the opposition just run over us. I was again definitely more nervous, but still, this is a great test. I want to win. Can you do it? And I think for us to finally get out of that against a good opposition, it should hopefully go a long way. And was there anything you saw in those moments when it got really panicky that we were able to shift it back into our favor that maybe you haven't seen in the early stages this year when it's faded in those second halves?
I tried to do a bit of reflection on what are we actually seeing different? And this feels like a Voss answer, which you may not like. But to me, isn't it literally just execution? Where it feels like in those first 4 games, we were trying to do a lot of the same things. Like we were trying to bite off certain kicks. We were trying to kind of, I don't know, even defensively, like it feels similar, but we were missing more kicks than not. We were dropping the marks. We were missing the shots on goal. Like Nick Haynes, man, like
unbelievable
brother,
game.
welcome. Like all the things that were going wrong for him in the first couple of games, he's executing on, and that's the difference between a goal or not. And so executing on these things just means that we get the dubs. I don't know if it's that simple. It feels kind of like it.
And I think on top of that, there was just such a determined nature about everything for 4 quarters that he's such a shift from those first 4 rounds where when the pressure came, we melted, we were fumbly, we looked panicked, we didn't look confident. And I understand that to a degree, but the determination wasn't there. It was like we had given up that, we're going to lose this. We're going to bottle it. We're feeling the pressure. Whereas this time, there was that moment, Geelong's kicked a few goals, you need to step up here. And they still could have potentially lost it. Who knows what could have happened, but just want to tackle, to chase, to win that next football, every single contest, go in again, go in harder. You saw the result of what that can do for you in a game against a really good opposition. That was one of my key positives. It was just for everything. And I was saying this as it was transpiring, and it was cool to see the bench cam footage where Rob Innes actually said these exact words, which for the first time in my life, I thought maybe I need to be on the bench. Maybe I am qualified for this. Clearly I'm not. But it gave myself a bit of self-importance, which was nice. But it was just that old adage of you don't need to score immediately. You don't need to score now. You just need to score next. Because I think that's what was happening. We were very panicky. Almost every possession, we were trying to turn that into a score for that first sort of 5 or so minutes. And then you started to see this, no, we can just go hard into each contest, try to win or even each little battle. And that will eventually, if we win those, if we even those, turn into our favor and we will score. And it was great to then see that be the messaging from Cripper, from everyone on the bench, that calmness and trying to get some composure. I'd be very interested to know what the bench cam was like in that Richmond game when it was starting to turn, if it was still similar messaging, but it wasn't sort of coming through. Because, I've said the word determined 30 times now, but that was everything. You're going to lose games of football, but if you bring that effort and want to tackle, want to chase, want to win the football, you're just going to win more games than you lose. And that's the Carlton we've been wanting to see. That's a Carlton that plays for the jumper that the fans love. So, that was a big, big win for me.
That's a good one. I would love them to, I don't know, if we win the premiership or something, release the round 1 bench cam. I would love to see.
Of each game. So as a story, that'd be unbelievable.
That's really good. Yeah.
Did you have any other big positives, big takeaways from this game?
Yeah, I think this one, I know we're going to chat a little bit about Chris Scott's press conference a little later, which will be a fun topic. One of the things that he talked about was the pressure. And I think that is just something that was really evident to me in this game. And the interesting thing that he said in the press conference was about when Geelong were making mistakes, when there wasn't the pressure around them. And I don't know, I'm keen for your kind of perspective on that because, yes, obviously you can make mistakes when there's no pressure. But for me, a lot of what pressure is about having, applying the pressure in a lot of those moments, so much so that players feel pressure even when there isn't a Carlton player a few meters within them. And I feel like Scott was kind of underplaying that in a way and making it very like we played bad, not what Carlton did was forcing that. So that was a positive for me.
No, I agree with you. And I think that there was a massive amount of perceived pressure out there from us. And
Perceived pressure.
that's exactly what it does when you bring the heat, every single component. And our front half has been such a big welcoming change, bringing that from the start of every single game for 4 quarters. And you noticed it. There were a couple of moments where like Geelong kicked the ball out on the full and there was no one around them at all. And that's so unlike Geelong. So I get to a degree, Chris Scott, saying that's not us. We're playing bad football. But I would always attribute that to the opposition because those numbers were there, because the pressure was on every disposal. Paddy Cripps' spear tackling in midair, their midfielders. I mean, there were so many amazing defensive moments from us. And it wasn't just necessarily the tackle pressure. It was the last ditch effort spoils where you can't believe they got there. Like Nick Haynes is one in that 4th quarter on the boundary. No idea how he got there or got a fist to that. When you do that for 4 quarters, of course, the opposition are maybe going to start to feel that and make errors. That's massive. And for us to do that to a team that is normally really composed, I think is such a positive. And I guess my other and main key positive goes back to Chris Scott. And it goes back to what I talked about last episode when we were looking forward towards these next games, these 5 games before the bye. And we were talking about, do we need a scalp in this? Is it just about getting wins? What do we need to build into this season, be that finals team and hopefully push for more? And I think the biggest thing I was speaking of in regard to that was simply, when have we ever outcoached anyone under Voss?
Good one.
Probably the only time I think you could really say that was the last time against Geelong. Well, massive kudos to Vossi in the coaching group again, because they outcoached Chris Scott, the best coach in the business. And the big thing that's getting spoken about in the media now, which I love when these trends start to happen when we do it to a side, instead of it being the opposite, all of a sudden it's, if you take the ball off Geelong, they're no good. And the stat that was getting run with was their record when conceding more than 88 uncontested marks in a game is 4 wins, 1 draw, 13 losses, compared to on the opposite, when they're able to not concede plus 88, it's 26 wins, 11 losses. So they're clearly, I mean, it's a weird stat because normally if you are not letting your opposition control the football, you're going to win games. They've got more of the ball, you're probably going to lose. But I think clearly with the way Geelong play, they're not a ridiculously contested side. They are a bit more of that outside run and dash, particularly with the way that their sort of small, mid-sized forwards get into the game. For us to, again, take the ball away from them, change the angles, chip mark through the game when we need to, was massive. And I've just got to give so much credit to the coaching staff because they can walk away saying, yep, we won that game. That was a coaching box kind of win. So yeah, I was very, very pleased with that.
Love it. Yeah. And Chris was asked about that in the press conference. I'd recommend everybody listen to it because he gave quite a cryptic response that, to me, it felt like he was kind of saying we were okay giving them that. Like, that's how I interpreted it, was that it was like they were like, part of their strategy was to allow that.
Which you could maybe understand, since we don't tend to be a really good team at moving the football. That's been our kryptonite, is great in the contest. We've been speaking about it as well over these last 2 games, North Melbourne and West Coast. Great. We're winning the contest again. We're scoring from stoppages. We're scoring from the front half pressure. But what happens when that's taken away? Can we be that transition side? Can we score from turnover? For us to be able to do that this week, for us to be able to chip through the opposition and move the ball so easily against a really strong football team, that's a massive tick for me. Being able to get those 99 uncontested marks, that's massive. Normally we don't get that space. We don't create it. I thought that was such a big win this week.
Yep. No, I couldn't agree with you more.
Were there any other main takeaways, or do you have any maybe underrated things and positives that maybe aren't getting enough attention this week?
I guess this one came to mind because it was such a prevalent conversation for you and I before this win streak. The backline mix, like just firing on all cylinders. So impressive. Everyone, like genuinely, take ourselves back 2 months where we were like JSOS down back. Dunno. Like we weren't saying it wasn't going to work, but we didn't have the evidence to say that it would work, right? Haynes, all preseason, we were like, well, I don't know if he even is best 22 or has a role in this team. McGovern's getting older. Is he going to be is he on the downhill? Newman's out. What does that look like?
Ollie Hollands gets thrown into the back line. That's a new component to it as well.
One. I mean, come on. Just the synergy that they have and the way that they each support each other in the different roles that they play. And JSOS is getting all of the love now about, apparently he's the 4th ranked defender in the league and he's in the All-Australian conversation. What? Insane. I think we need to be talking about that.
No, I agree. I think it's a big talking point, and particular on my man Nick Haynes, who I mean, we recruited him. Our opinions was very much of a really handy recruit if he's replacing that sort of Marchbank role where we kind of don't expect you to play each week, but you're there in case of emergency kind of vibes. And then we get into the season and it's his first choice. We're going with these kind of 4 key defenders. There was a lot of worry on how that looked. Okay, these guys haven't played a lot of football. He's not a key defender. He's another one of these mid-size. A lot of speculation on just how this is going to work. And then has, unfortunately, in that first round, one of the worst debuts anyone could ever have.
Yeah.
To his credit, and this is probably not being spoken about enough, but past round 1 has not had a bad game.
Yeah.
I think supporters will say those first couple of games after that he wasn't good, but I was trying to watch him closely at those games and I didn't think he was that bad at all. I think you're holding on to what you saw last week, so you're needing a big performance to overturn your now opinion of him. And it was really that Doggies game where I started to notice quite a lot of good things about him and weirdly became someone that I was really getting up and about for every time they did something well because of this, I guess, negativity from supporters. He became one of those whipping boys, and I like to weirdly get behind those kind of players. And then for what he was able to do this week was unbelievable. That was genuinely, it could be one of his greatest games he's ever played in his long career, where I'm pretty sure he's been All-Australian. He's been a really good defender in the league. He was just everywhere. And I was worried initially watching the game because I sit behind the goal, so I copped our sort of defensive half for the first quarter. And looking at some of the matchups, I'm thinking, Haynes is lined up on Stengel right now. This is alarming for me because, I mean, that guy's got so much speed. How is Haynes going to deal with it? For us to have been able to get that cohesion, at times we were passing on assignments when we needed to. Those things were so pleasing for me. And Mitch McGovern as well, really maligned early in this season. Some massive, you have to go, you have to win it now. I mean, there was so much criticism from us on, which I think is valid, on can the 4 talls work? Definitely. There's been some bad evidence, but there's been some good evidence. And Vossi clearly likes it. It's what they want. For us to show that it can work against a good opposition gives me hope that this can be something that can go forward for the rest of the year. Are you sitting very positively now on those sort of 4 once they're all healthy?
100%. It's so much more nuanced than just saying the 4 talls, because like Silvani, when you think about those 4, like we want the ball in his hand. Like we feel good about the decision making that he does and the way that he can execute with the ball. Like, so that's a positive. Like McGovern, now that he's getting back into that form, is doing that as well. God, I loved every time they kicked it to Haynes and Close. Like that was poor Brad Close in those scenarios, because he was just getting eaten up every time. So yeah, I don't know. It just feels so reliable, and I guess this is the kind of thing where if we have a bad game this week, we might look more critically on it. But to your point, and you've made this point in the podcast before, let's just pretend that round 1 never happened. That was just a nightmare, that a bad dream that wasn't real. And then if you just look at the sample since then, you can have a lot more optimistic look on a lot of Carlton things, but the backline in particular, like we were so worried about it after that round 1. It was like change everything.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I saw some stats this week, where these are all like the positive side of it. So when I say like we're third for things like this, that's a good thing. It's not as if we've conceded the most; it's the opposite. But for just some of the wording can be a bit weird. But we're sort of third in points against, so we're conceding the third less points against us. Second best for not conceding those inside 50s. Fourth best for not conceding scores per inside 50. Second best for opposition's change to score percentage. Second for points against from intercepts as well. So the defense seems set, and crazy because it's a position that there are quite a lot of new pieces in there. Like you said, Sauce in there, Haynes in there, going with the different roles because we've gone a bit taller. Don't have Newman down there. Ollie Hollins has been thrown into it. That's a lot of changes through an off season. That's been there the whole season. The defense has been great. We have not been conceded heavily against, even if in our poor performances. That's been a shock to me. Now it's clearly about how we can continue to move the ball, because currently we're number 1 without the footy ranked in the stats right now. We're 9th with the ball, 5th for clearances, and 3rd for that post-clearance contest. Those are really exciting numbers, and I think this can really start to turn in our favor if we can just show what we have over these last 3 weeks. Again, it's small sample size. We tried our hardest not to go too crazy after 4 losses. We can't go too crazy after 3 wins. We've said this at length. It's about that bye. Then you can maybe have some more opinions, but all positives for me, right where we sit.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think that's... Yeah, I remember so I watched the game with our man Adam on the weekend, and I remember asking me like, genuinely, how do I think that this is going to play out before the game? And I remember saying, well, I genuinely feel confident that Geelong are not going to put a massive score on us. It's just a matter of whether we will be able to put the winning score on. And that's how I feel like I'm feeling every week now with Carlton. Like, I feel so good about our defensive system and the players down there that we're not going to get, oh my God, touch wood, we're not going to get 100 points kicked on us. It's just a matter of if we can, if the forward line movement can put that score on.
No, and speaking about forward line, there was one of my underrated positives was, it's kind of twofold. It's one, just Harry McKay in general and his performance, but particularly the crowd and what I was able to be a part of there on Sunday afternoon, when in particular his first goal, everyone was immediately getting around him and standing out of their chairs. The big one was when the free kick in the back, Geelong supporters start booing, start not getting happy. And again, every single Carlton supporter in my vicinity standing up, cheering, turned the noise into such a positive thing. And it was just so great that it was such a collective mindset from everyone. It wasn't like we had to orchestrate this. This was such a natural thing. And we did this for, I guess, in a different way. But when Doherty came back, there was this clear, let's get behind him. Let's bring this noise. It happened again for Harry. So big shout out to us fans, because those are special moments. And while he didn't kick that goal, when he kicks that next one, surely in his mind, he's thinking, there's so much positive noise for me that will help build the confidence. And I think you saw him really build into the game, and getting those little positive reinforcements. He just kept growing and growing. And for a guy who's gone through quite a lot at this start of the season, from a footy perspective, you're happy he's back, but you don't necessarily know what kind of footballer you're going to get. So for him to then have that performance and kick those big goals, take those big marks when the pressure was on, just such big positives. And I'm so happy he was able to get that in his first proper return this season.
That's a great one. I love the Harry angle. I love the fans playing their role angle. Yeah, I've given Harry my 2 votes for biggest kind of overperformer, because what were we expecting from him in this game? Like, after the little time off and then the concussion, low expectations, I guess, of hoping that he would just get through the game and play our role, let alone just get better and better as the game goes on and be so pivotal.
And without going too over the top with where things sit right now, but we were so concerned with connection everywhere. The team looked disconnected, disjointed. The fans, we were feeling that with the club messaging and everything. And it feels like this is getting better amongst everything, the content that's coming out of the football club. And after the game, it feels a lot more raw and authentic. But then also these little moments like that, just something as simple as Geelong supporters start booing Harry McKay and we go, no, don't you dare. That makes us feel more connected. And I just wonder, all these little moments that are building are clearly helping everything right now. Where that goes from here will be a big question, but it's so needed when we have been in this kind of pit just sitting there. We've needed to feel connected and more attached to this football club. So in a weird way, I feel like it's helping. Yeah.
That's great. I think this momentum, I mean, when we preview the next game, we'll talk about this more, but the fact that we have this confidence and momentum building, I think it's really important that we now do take full advantage of where we are. Because as Vossi said, like, this is not going to be the way all season. Like, we're going to have more dips, and it's going to come in waves. So while we're feeling like this, I think we just got to keep banking these wins.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think it kind of flows on from that connection piece. Was another one of my little underrated positives was, I think I brought it up last week that, we're a fan base that wants to cheer those big tackles, those big chases, and that kind of more blue collar team oriented acts on the field is what we prefer over that big flashy mark. And it was kind of cool in that weird little snippet address from Vossi after the game, where he kind of addressed that. He mentioned that he might listen to the pod, because he said he's been getting some feedback. So maybe that's where he heard it. And maybe I'm starting to believe this is legit, because he said that, and I don't have the exact quote, but it was around the tackling, those moments. And that's what we should be built on. And that's what we should be celebrating. And that makes me feel more connected to the football club, because that's what us fans want. We want that pressure first, show us that you want to be out there fighting for the football club type thing. And it's what the soul of this football club was built on. And so for me, Vossi came in, said contest and pressure, and we all said, perfect. We want to see a side that's tough, that's strong in the contest.
Yeah.
Feels like we're going back to that a little bit. And I think, for Vossi to kind of address that in a weird way just makes me feel a bit more bullish on the proper things that should be built on as far as an identity, when we were questioning that only a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. And more bullish on the podcast now that we know that the
Vossi listening. Thank you. But let's go a little bit negative, Lockie. Clearly, we're not flying. We're not on top of the ladder. There's been even in that game, there were some shaky moments. So what was maybe your biggest issue or your biggest negative that you have taken away from that to maybe balance out the over the top positivity that comes from such a big win against a good opposition.
I hate to say it, I'm not going to be bringing a lot of balance because I've been thinking about this since the game, and maybe I'm just flying too much, but it was difficult for me to find negatives in terms of from like a game plan, strategy, holistic point of view. So I'm excited to hear what you have for that because I'm assuming that your analysis is going to be better than me. So I wanted to just put a player out there, someone who I don't know if we've really talked about all this season, and I'm just curious to hear your take on him. Blake Acres. He's looking off the pace a bit for me. And so I'm curious what your perspective is. Do you think it definitely feels like his spot in the 22 isn't as locked as it has been in the past couple of years where he's been brilliant? Do you have a feel on him? Would you be open to the idea of us exploring someone else on that wing?
Yeah, it's been a bit of an interesting start to the season. I mean, when he went out with illness, I think he was borderline close to being dropped anyway, just on form.
I felt so.
I was a bit surprised that he was brought so quickly back into the team because of the form. And I think in that West Coast game, we had a few others patrolling the wing, even Doherty, that I thought played his best game for the season, looked really good in that role. I think now looking forward that everything else is kind of rolling to a positive, he does still seem like someone who isn't along with the ride where everyone else is up and about at the moment. He would be one of maybe 2 or 3 whose positions in this squad right now are quite easily replaced. Positionally with guys we have covered in depth that can step up. And then I think on form as well, I agree with you, hasn't been great. For a component, you kind of back him in because of what he's done previously. And maybe there are little bits of leadership that are out there that you don't see, which is why when maybe these more experienced guys seemingly down on form with ball in hand are kept in the team. It's what they're doing off the ball, instructing, making sure everyone else is in the right spots. But no, I agree with you. Shaky start to this season. Is there someone you ideally see as that next in?
Probably not. It's times like this where, like I said, when things felt so good in this performance, where I feel so good about the backline mix, where TDK is flying, the inner midfield mix is just clicking perfectly with their roles, and the forward line is getting quite settled. That you go, well, then where can the improvement be, and where's the potential downside? I have it. Akers is exactly the kind of player that could now have like a top 3 in the team performance next week and just completely turn it around. But I'm just kind of putting that out there as a little flag of like, guys that are 10 years into their career, sometimes, season to season, you can see a decline. So I'm hoping that's not going to be the case for him. But I don't know. Do you like? I look, Lucas Camporelli would be a name, but not dying to bring him back in. Binns is a guy. Is he going to get opportunity this year? I don't want to mess with us, the winning formula. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, I think now that Walshy's on a bit more of a wing, we've got Cottrell. I think something you could do is just move Ollie Hollands back onto the wing. Maybe a guy like Cowan comes back into defense. That feels like an easy lever to pull, which I'd be interested to see. But do you want to move too many things around when things are working? It's always that balancing act. We saw even last year, where all of a sudden we're playing some good footy. I think Hewitt gets dropped. We started just tinkering with a few things we didn't need to, and that may not have been the catalyst as to why the form dipped. But then when the form dips, you start looking at answers and you think, well, why did we change what was working? So I'm hesitant to do a lot there. Lucas is probably it's probably him or Doc that are more obvious ones.
Yeah.
Does that truly excite me? Not a lot right now, but I think it's a good thing to flag, and then maybe we can have a look over these next few weeks in particular and hopefully come up with some good answers. I think I have a couple of negatives. They're not huge. One of them you can look at it in so many different ways. But for this, I'm panning it as a negative. And that's simply feel like a lot of the big moments of that game were big individual defensive moments of brilliance that kind of saved us. You know, Haynes taking marks, Gov taking marks, the big spoils when they got them out of nowhere. And from where I was positioned and seated at the ground, if we didn't win or half those contests, Geelong would probably be out and kick a goal. So while it's great we did it, we put ourselves in a position where we could act and we did it positively. The worry, I guess, to a degree is the times Geelong did get out, they scored so easily. And if we're relying on these 100% everything working for us, defensive one-on-one miracle stops, how sustainable is that? So that's something I'm interested to see.
Good one.
Overall, I'm going to look at it as a positive in, wow, how great was it this week with those defensive efforts. But particularly in the first quarter, their first couple of goals, I just noticed it was all of a sudden Geelong had an extra player. They had a spare and we just could not communicate the right players. And all of a sudden Danger is the one that's spare or Stengel's the one that's spare. And it happened just a few times, this miscommunication where we're either standing in no man's land, not able to affect the contest, or we're letting someone now just be free in a dangerous spot. And there was even that one where Stengel kicks the goal. Wiedering's your last defender, which is a good thing, but not if Stengel's the furthest forward Geelong player. And yeah, there's going to be moments that it doesn't go right for you. It's about limiting those. So I think that's something that I'll be
it's a good,
definitely
really
watching over the next couple of weeks.
It's a really good one. You've absolutely nailed it. It's a hard balance because you want those players to be able to stand up in those moments, like you said. But how sustainable isn't it? It isn't always going to come off. Like it isn't always going to be Harry taking massive contested marks on the wing in the last quarter. Sometimes they won't happen. It's a positive when they do, but a potential watch.
Yeah. And then the other one's very simple. It was just a bit frustrated to a degree. We didn't put them away earlier where
I know.
for 4 quarters and maybe you take 10 minutes out of that game, we were dominant. We owned them completely. And while we were able to score, there was always that bit of just keeping them in it. They'd always find a way to kick just those few goals to make it close. And credit to Geelong because they are a good team. I just kept saying when it happened, like, they're too good to not be out of this game. And that's clearly that next evolution for us. And it's why we aren't that nailed on top 4 proper premiership contender right now. And it's early in the season, so clearly things can build. But when you have such dominance everywhere on the field, that should be we're up by 30, 40, and we go on with it rather than, 3/4 time, we've let them kick a couple of goals and it's, panic station's game on. But weirdly, in the context of this game, like you alluded to as your positive, I loved that it was one we were challenged in. I wanted to see that challenge and how we reacted so quickly after this uptick in form against North and West Coast. So to see us tested and pass it with flying colours, it's a positive with a negative attached.
Yeah, it's really true. Yeah, it felt like that throughout the game. There was, we know, like Hewitt put the nail in the coffin, but White also could have done that a few minutes before. I know you could debate how difficult that shot that he had was, but that was an opportunity to kind of seal the game, kind of left the door open a little bit. But we're growing.
So I guess on the back of that, where does that put us, Lockie? Because that's the big question out of this game. All of a sudden, I mean, was it real? Is this true form? We've now gone and beaten Geelong, who had just beaten Hawthorn. We're in a good vein of form here. So what does that mean for us going forward? We said this was the scalp that we wanted. We got the performance on top of that. It wasn't a one where it was really scrappy throughout and we just managed to limp over the line, even though it was close at the end. So have your opinions kind of changed now on this game, or do you still need a bigger sample size from us? I'm really interested to know where everything sits after such a big win.
Well, it's kind of both in that it hasn't really changed my opinion, but I was feeling pretty positive before this game anyway, even though it was just the North and West Coast wins. So again, it all comes back down to expectations. Still thinking that we're a top 8 team. Like, I just don't think that we're in the bottom half of quality of teams in this league. Where it places us in terms of the end of the season, yeah, it's I guess it's just too early to have those conversations, really. You'd be, well, I think this is what we said last week. This 5-game stretch can go in any direction, and then post-bye can go in any direction. Every season it's shown how chaotic and different it can be. So it hasn't changed a lot. I'm still very optimistic.
Yeah, no, I said I wasn't going to overreact to a loss. So I'm going to try to not overreact to a win. Yep. It definitely changes little parts of it. There's always that worry in the back of your head that it was just North, that it was just West Coast. Maybe we aren't that good. So to be able to put in that performance and have the evidence this season that, okay, we're still good enough to beat those teams. There is something still in this squad. We're riding this bit of momentum and building beautiful. And I think we all needed that, just a little bit of evidence and optimism going forward for this 5-game patch, because we know it's some tough opposition. None of these games are going to be easy. There's no more kind of gimmies for quite some time. So we needed to show something, and to do it in that performance as well was probably the more pleasing side of it, how well everyone as a team was able to play out there. The cohesion was almost perfect. Where is that from here on out? Well, it allows us to get that scalp at least that we asked for. Yeah. So we can hopefully, if we get the other wins on top of it in this patch, go to the bye and say, there's enough that says we're good enough to be that top 8 team. Whereas if it was just maybe a St. Kilda, Sydney, GWS, there'd probably still be that question mark of, we haven't beaten anyone who is in form, who is good. So I'm glad we've at least been able to tick that. It's just about doing it now. We need that bigger sample size, but no one is going to be being annoyed or frustrated at a win against Geelong. From what you saw in that game, was it a bit more of a sustainable brand? That's something that we spoke about earlier this season when things were going bad. What is our brand? What is the identity? A lot of criticism on Voss and co, rightfully so. Is that a more sustainable winning way we can move forward into this season?
Yeah, it's got to be. It's got to be. Like, we've touched on every area of the field. Like, the midfield balance just feels so much better with, like, Walsh and Chera, I guess, being the two that have been questioned of whether they're, like, pulling their weight and doing what we need from them. And now they are. And now Cripps can have his normal Cripps games, and he can have quieter Cripps games, and it doesn't matter. And Hewitt can lead. So from a midfield point of view, it feels like it's real. The forward line is interesting because it seemed like everybody played well on the forward line against North and West. Makes sense when you're kicking a buttload of goals. But in this one, Motlop was pretty terrible to me, and we still won. That's almost a good sign that, like, we can win without all those kind of role players firing.
I think it's so tough, like, because Motlop's now become one of those whipping boys. So naturally, like I said earlier, he becomes the man I defend. I feel like it's such a difficult position, small forward, and he's almost playing higher in this role as well. It's almost like, because he's getting a bit more midfield minutes, I wonder if he's almost playing more of what we wanted Jagger Smith to be in patches. And it didn't come off in this game. He had a lot of those almost moments. There were times I was definitely frustrated with him, but I think the positive of this, and where I think we need to be looking, is if one of them isn't performing, do the rest step up, because they're going to have off weeks. My point. And so, yeah, I think that the positive with that is Durden again just flying for marks. How many speckers is this man going to take? Is every week going to be
Well,
like, is that the mark of the year? It'll just be which round was Corey Durden's mark of the week, mark of the season. Like, that's what I'm excited to see at the Brownlow this year. And then Will White just continuing his little run of form and energy into this team. And then the big credit has to go to a guy like Lockie Fogarty, who was probably, again, that borderline, are you out of this team? Can we elevate your role to someone else? Goes out there, takes those big marks where the hits were coming, pressure was great, puts it on the scoreboard. That's all we can ask. That is all that we can ask from these kind of guys, particularly after a poor game against North Melbourne. I was very pleased with most of what I saw.
For sure. No, we're aligned. Like, I know it sounded kind of like a negative me saying that, but it's true. Like, we aren't going to be getting 8 out of 10 performances from each of our forwards every week. And that's just the facts. And so if we can keep winning, even when we don't get that, and each of the guys will take their turn, like this week, who knows, Durden will touch it 4 times and Motlop will be great. But if we can still get that win, then we're moving.
Yeah, no, love it. Now we've got a couple of really good questions from the listeners.
Okay.
Big Vince Labate has sent this in. Apologies if I butchered that last name. I am so white, unfortunately.
Yes.
But this is one of the belters, and normally Lockie does the questions, but it was so good I have to steal it back from you, Lockie. I'm sorry about that, and I'll put you into the hot seat. Might be one of the best questions you've honestly ever had, so you cannot sit on the fence in this at all. I want a clean answer.
I'm preparing the fence.
Do you think this recent run of form is mainly due to confidence gained from beating some bottom of the ladder teams and building upon that, or have we made any fundamental changes since that Collingwood game that we can attribute these wins to?
Yeah, that is an absolute perler. I'm gonna try and not sit on the fence. I think that it is the former, which is kind of what I said earlier around the execution thing. For me, and maybe that's because I'm missing something, as not a freaking coaching analyst myself, but I'd love to know what those fundamental changes could be, because to me, it just feels like we are no doubt more confident. Whether that has come from these wins or whether it's come from other things internally that are happening, but it just feels like we're hitting the kicks, like the hand. Remember we were talking about the handballs in the first 4 weeks, where it's like, how do we make every handball just a little bit hard? What, like every time we're handballing it is never just making
even
it
the
easy
kicks,
for
like
everyone.
the switch kicks to a man with no one around him, we make him have to take a couple of steps. It wasn't just straight to him. Now all of a sudden they're not having to move. It's crazy,
right? How many missed tackles were we? Oh, how many tackles were we missing in those first 4 games? That, like obviously there's always going to be missed tackles, but we're sticking more of them now. That can't be strategy to me. So yeah, I lean towards the former.
I think I will too. I think it's a bigger component to what we saw, and they didn't look happy when they were playing at all. There was no fun. There was no fun component. And I brought this up before. It was something Adam Kingsley said quite a lot with his team. And I respect him as one of the, I still, even though GWS are going through some tough form, I still think he's one of the best head coaches out there. And like, you notice it from the bench cam, and there's just these little glimpses. I think it might have been Cripper. I might be putting it to the wrong person, but it was like, when you go out there, get around him for that tackle, get around him for that spoil. They were like, you could see it was such a directive from the leaders of this club to, you've seen it, go over and celebrate those team moments. And we mentioned it last week. I'm pretty sure we had a big discussion on how good it is to see that. But you just think about how much energy that gives you on the field to do it again, to go again. And it's no wonder our pressure is all of a sudden up, and we're getting more excited to do these things and to play every single part of the game if the camaraderie is up. So I think confidence plays a massive, massive role with it. And even just look at our top 6 or so players. Like, that was my kind of defense to the depth and bottom half of this list throughout the start of this year, was well, our stars aren't performing, so how can you put it on the lower half and say it's them that are not performing? Now, all of a sudden, you're seeing this uptick in our stars. They're playing better football, being our better players each and every week. All of a sudden, those role players, the bottom tier of the list, are back in form. It's crazy how much those little things can shift it. Now, have we made any little changes? I think there's maybe more emphasis on certain little things. You've seen Walsh now move a little bit more to the wing like we've wanted to see. But
yes,
you look at Voss's press conferences throughout the season, and he seemed to be alluding to the fact that I'm telling them to do something, they're not doing it.
Yeah.
And this isn't us was kind of his quote that felt very David Teague-esque, this isn't the way we want to play. But it feels like that's kind of what shifted. We've finally, like you're saying, executing and doing what has been asked of us, and couple that with the confidence, things are starting to work where the contest is back up, the front half pressure is back up that was there in 23 when we played our best football. But that element of trying to kick through teams that we sort of felt we were moving towards, that's still there, but there's just other components now built on top of that. So yeah, all very positive at this stage, and we'll see how it transpires over the next months or so.
Yeah. Yeah. Love to hear if people think it's the latter, though. I'm very interested to hear those takes.
Yeah, let us know what you think to that question. Drop it down in the YouTube comments down below, or if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcast, wherever you get your audio podcast, hit us up on the socials at Navy Blue Corner with the specifics too, because I'm very, very interested in that. And the other big question, which I really do like, this one is from Genus Species 2, asks, are you more or less disappointed by the Richmond loss after the Geelong win?
Oh my God. Oh, that's an even harder question. If the Collingwood game feels like last season, the Richmond game feels like 2019 or something. Wow. I feel like we're going to have to go and watch the Richmond game back in the buys or something. We were planning our buy episodes before the show. I feel
Don't do that to us. The buys are normally fun, Lockie. Don't make me have to watch that back.
I know, but it's just so hard to even remember that feeling. Like I remember whatever we were up by in the 40s in that game. It's like, oh my God, we're going to absolutely roll them here. What even happened in that last quarter? I think my opinion of it hasn't really changed. I think maybe this is the kind of one where we get to the end of the season and we'll be looking at where we'll always look back at those pivotal moments. Honestly, this Adelaide game feels like it could be one of those pivotal moments where if we can get this win, we'll look back on it and be like, wow, that was a really important scalp to get on the road. And we'll inevitably look back on the Richmond one and be like, gee, that extra win would have been really handy to have.
Yeah, I'm interested to get your take on my answer because it feels very politically fence city, but I think it's not. I think it could be one of the better ones, which is it doesn't sort of change my perspective of the loss. I'm not more disappointed. I'm not anything around it. It's just kind of made me allowed to forget that game a little bit more. If you like that for a fence it, I'll answer it in a completely different way. Because it has. Like, the Gold Coast losing to them made me feel a little bit more in the vein of, okay, maybe they're not as bad as we thought they were. If they can do that, it makes our loss not look as horrific. But when you do beat a team like Geelong, you think, oh, if only we'd won that game and this game, all of a sudden, look where we are on the ladder. But we beat Geelong. If we can beat Adelaide, I'm not going to be thinking about that game anytime soon because we're rolling and we're humming. So, yeah, let us know your thoughts on that in the comments as well. That's a really good question. Thank you, you guys there. And now we're moving on to one thing you wanted to speak about, Lockie, which was Big Chris Scott in the press conference. Now, I'll put my hand up. Haven't seen the full thing entirety. I've seen little clips here or there. So you're going to be my go-to for this. Now, firstly, the people weren't happy, the Carlton supporters, because he didn't give us credit in his press conference. He said Geelong were bad. Didn't seem to say it was because of Carlton. What were your thoughts on that, and then feel free to bring any of your wider thoughts on that press conference, because I feel like you have a little bit to say on this.
A little bit. I mean, as always, my caveat is that I really don't give a shit about these, because
before you launch into the biggest rant we've ever seen on the podcast.
Exactly. I really feel, I said this to you before, I think the way that he and Voss go about their press conferences is very, very different, but leads to the same result, where I feel like with Vossy, it almost doesn't matter what question is asked. He already knows what he's going to answer. Like, he already has like whatever his line is going to be about that topic. You ask him about the, I don't know, forward line pressure, and he'll talk about the backline or something. He's already just thinking about that. With Chris, he really thinks through the questions of the reporters and chooses whether to be completely honest or just not say anything. Like, it doesn't seem like he's really ever spinning it. I don't know. That's just a little psychological analysis from me there. But I agree. I don't think he gave us credit. Not that he needs to. Yeah,
well, that was going to be my point. Are you annoyed that he didn't give us credit? Because that's probably where a lot of Carlton supporters are. I've seen them on the socials getting a little riled up about it. So I was interested to see your kind of perspective on that. And where are you looking for the validation of another opposition coach? Do you get annoyed when you think they're lying and not giving the kudos to the opposition?
No, I don't. I mean, I go back to when you and I, and forgive me if I'm misremembering, but I feel like you and I agreed that, like, what we feel like the press conference is for is that's the opportunity for the coach to talk to their fans, like give the message of the game to their people. So if that's Scott's opinion, that it's just all about the fact that he said Geelong, that's the worst I remember us playing in a long time. Okay, that feels not true, but I'm not offended.
Last season, Scott.
Yeah, remember that one? Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm not really asked. I'll be dead honest on it. Hence why I didn't really listen to his press conference. If he gives us credit, beautiful. If he doesn't, oh well. My opinion's weird on it too, where if he doesn't give us credit and kind of the way he did it, I weirdly like that more. Because I sensed from a few of the clips I saw, he looked a bit rattled about what had just transpired. And then the questioning, he just didn't want to be there. That makes me happy that we did that to him, that he doesn't want to have to give us credit. He wants to say it was just Geelong playing bad. To me, that's what I take from it. I'm like, yes, he's like embarrassed to say it. He doesn't want to give us that credit, because we all know we played amazing. And a big percentage of why Geelong were bad was because of what we brought to the table. We all know that. So I take his inability to say it as a massive, massive win. I loved when he was like, one of the other clips where he just straight up went, yeah, I don't want to answer that question. I'm just not going to answer it, and sort of moved on. And you're like, as if the press just sort of allow him to do that, which is crazy. But you were spot on with your Voss impression, where they kind of ask him, like, they'll ask him, oh, defense was a bit shaky in this or whatever. And he'd be like, yeah, look, I thought the forwards were good though. You're like, that's not what I asked, Vossy. What are you talking about? You've just completely changed it.
This is why I'm so cynical about these in general. Like,
on the opposition.
Yeah. I mean, God, again, we could, maybe you suggested a good kind of side episode for us to do, looking at kind of the AFL context more broadly. And maybe press conferences will be one that I talk about, because I side with Scott on some of them, where he, like, the reporters are asking him very pointed game plan questions. And he's like, I'm not, why would I go into that? What's the benefit of me explaining that?
Yeah. There's a lot of nuance to it. It's a weird, wacky world. I'm excited for that mid-season episode from you, Lockie, seeing how you might be able to fix the entire league. But let's move on to the votes. The Navy Blue Corner Blue Bagger Badge of Honor your 3, your 2, and your 1. Keeping in mind, if anyone is new to the podcast, that the 2 votes goes to who performed above what we expect. So you can sometimes get some wacky names in this, and you might be thinking, how did he get second best on ground? That's not exactly what the votes are for, which kind of makes the idea behind it is the 3 votes really counts pretty much, and we get to reward the battlers. So I'm excited. These votes could go to almost anyone.
Really hard.
Who'd you give them to?
So many names that I wanted to give one to. And that's why I'm going to do the Ian Brownie and give 1 vote to 6 players. No, not really. I'm giving 3 to Haynes as my best on. But I am very open to other guys getting the 3. Just so proud of him for his performance. He definitely could have got the 2 as well, but I've given that to Harry, who, like I said before, I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting to get from him from this game. But whatever it was, he over-delivered. And so many players could get the 1 as well. And this one is just, I guess, a biased pick. I've given it to Elijah Hollins. Again, kind of in the Harry boat, where recently back into the team, didn't set the world on fire last week. Set the world on fire this week.
I like your votes. I have got one player different, but Harry was originally in my votes and I took him out. I gave my 3 to Nick Haynes as well. Just unbelievable. Nice. Man mountain down back. I gave my 2 votes to Elijah Hollins. I was originally had given Nick Haynes the 2 because of, again, he's performed above. But I needed to shoehorn this man in because we haven't even spoken about him yet.
No, we haven't.
His cleanliness and ability to just turn everything into a positive for us. He was such a key cog in pretty much every single chain that we conjured up on the weekend, whether it was the perfect handball out into space, perfect kick, perfect just movement to create space. It's funny how when you get your best players back, Charlie with some form and games under his belt and some fitness, Harry comes back in, Elijah comes back in. Hey, we actually look like a really good football team. Potentially the issue maybe there is some depth and who can cover those guys, but the positive there is when they're there, he's been firing. So 2 for Elijah because I wasn't expecting him to almost be one of our best players out there. And then I gave the 1.
Just quietly, just with a quick search because I was like 25 touches. That's his equal most as well at AFL level. So
that's crazy.
One of his best games ever.
Yeah, and the 1 vote I've gone different here is to a man who weirdly we haven't spoken about. I turned to my partner Liv at this moment and said, if he kicks this, give him the Brownlow right now. And he's gone and dobbed it from what could be in about 10 years. It could be talked about a 90-meter goal by the sounds of things in about 10 years. It feels like it's grown 5 meters every time I hear someone talk about it. Georgie Hewitt gets the 1. Unbelievable again. And then just out of nowhere, Dobbs one from about 60 meters. Did not expect it. Did not expect the form from this man this season. And we needed those little moments when games become close. You need players to stand up. And the man with all the confidence right now, leading the best and fairest, has gone and won us the game. Just love to see it.
Mate, definitely leading the best and fairest. No doubt about it. Love him.
Yes. So let's move towards Adelaide. Let's put that Geelong game in the rearview mirror. What are you needing to see from this game, Lockie? Obviously, we want the win. Clearly, that's a big factor to this. Is there anything outside of that? Because we've talked about this run of 5 games, how we want that positive win-loss ledger. We wanted at least 1 scalp, which we've got immediately. We've got 1 we probably didn't expect. Yeah. So where does that kind of sit now? I'm very interested to know your thoughts heading into this game against the Crows.
I have a lot of thoughts leading into this game, but this question is always so hard to tackle because, like I mentioned earlier about the momentum and how I really want us to be able to take advantage of this patch that we're in. I feel like I'm almost in that win at all costs kind of mindset, which isn't often where I'm at. But I just feel like we've seen in this game against Geelong how everything can work and click. So I'm a believer that it's there. If we can win this game, like we're back to an even ledger on the ladder. It's a game that I just hate going to play Adelaide over there. Like the last couple of times, it's derailed our season in different ways, going over them and having them embarrass us. One time when we went over there and watched it, and it was one of the worst games I've ever been to. And then that first gather round where we just got absolutely embarrassed, and it kind of, it made our season take a dive. So I just really need a win from this one, and I really think we can.
Yeah, I definitely we can win this game of football, and hopefully we do. I think if I'm looking at it the opposite and trying to take the win away from it, it's stupidly simple, but that pressure, that hunger for 4 quarters till the final siren. You know, there were moments in that Geelong game where we just needed a tackle. And there was one that really stands out from Cripps, who hasn't had the greatest year by his own ridiculous standards. And I just remember the ball was just starting to move out on the wing, and he just lays a ridiculous tackle out of nowhere, holds the ball up, and you go, good, we can reset. Yeah. Those are just those little things that I just want to see for 4 quarters. And I think regardless of the win or loss, because we know it's a tough game, Adelaide, up until the last couple of games, had been in some incredible form. They're scoring quite heavily when they've been on. We haven't historically ever won in Adelaide Oval against the Crows, so it's one of those bogey fixtures.
Yeah.
If we do manage to lose this game, which won't be a positive at all, if it was a hard-fought game, you can kind of cop it moving on to the next one, because you're not going to win every single game of the season.
No.
So I guess that's where I sit with what I need to see. I can't be seeing we're up at halftime and we just fold away again, because then, well, what have we built? What have we learnt over these last few weeks? Going to your momentum side of things, I need to see a really hard-fought game.
Interesting. Yeah. For some reason, I'm struggling to see a close game in my mind. I feel like it's going to go one way or the other. I feel like it's either going to be a reasonably comfortable win for us, or one where we're not really in it. I don't know why I've got
Interesting.
that vibe.
Well, what would be your biggest concern then heading into this game?
Benjamin Keys.
Yeah, he's the only thing I've written down.
Really?
Yeah.
Get Chincotta back. Don't care if he's fit or not, and don't let him get a meter on you.
Is Ben Keys the easiest Supercoach draft stream this week?
Oh my God! Actually, good call. Let me see if he's available.
Because I'll be honest, obviously this wouldn't happen because they're actually a professional team and they need to talk to the footballers before the game. There's actual game plan and proper things that are going on, Lockie. But I would love if you walked into the change rooms at Adelaide Oval and there's just a photo of Ben Keys' face on the whiteboard, and it just says, whatever you do, win, loss, or draw, he does not touch the fucking football. And Vossi doesn't say anything. No one says a word, and we go out onto the field. And the first time he touches the ball, he is crunched into the ground. And that's all. And there you go. Set the tone. Because I swear to God, if he does it again and kicks 3 on us, I don't know what we do, Lockie. There almost needs to be some sort of genuine punishment for the Carlton team and defenders if Ben Keys turns it on. He's not in good form this season either, which makes it even worse.
Oh, that makes it even more inevitable, doesn't it? I mean, yeah. No, I love your thinking, mate. I think that's where
clearly there are other elements. Adelaide are a decent team. There's other things to worry about.
No,
but
it's all about
as a Carlton supporter, that's where our minds are going. And we've talked about this a little bit, but I want a very specific answer from you now, Lockie. Because we said a Geelong win would be a big scalp. And in this run of 5 games before the bye, Adelaide was that other big scalp. Away, we haven't done it. If we manage to win this, put in that another strong performance, do we start to become, we'll probably start to become one of those informed teams, Lockie. So,
oh yeah.
What would that do if we win this game? What would that start to change things? And then would your view of those next 3 games change at all? I know we're projecting what may or may not happen,
Yeah,
but I think
I
putting
hear.
this game into this kind of perspective is quite important.
Yeah, no, I hear that. In terms of like the narrative around the league, we will be the informed team if we win. It'll be 4 in a row. We will be back in the 8 if we win this one. Just looking at the matchups that are happening this week
And the percentage we've got currently. I think it's
and
the
the
4th
percentage. I
best, I
mean,
believe.
come on. Yeah. So in terms of the narrative outside of this podcast, we certainly will be. For us, what does it change? I mean, in terms of like your and my discussion, yeah, I almost feel like it's a question for you because, yeah, like I don't know, it's so hard to have these discussions. But like, what is our ceiling this season
Yeah.
to you?
Well, that's the thing. It's changed a lot. I had us as close to top 4, hopefully top 4 was kind of my idea this season. Push as far deep as we can into finals. After those first few rounds, it felt like our ceiling was creeping into the 8, like maybe we have over those last few years. All of a sudden, if we can, and I know it's one game, I don't want to go overboard too much, but being able to beat a team like Geelong and then off the back of that, beat a team like Adelaide in Adelaide, who have been a good team this season.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, that would make me think, okay, we can step up in some of these big moments, particularly if we're really challenged again and manage to not panic, be composed, grow into it, and seemingly learn from these moments. Then, yeah, I think the ceiling would start to grow for me. Right now, we're still bottom half of the 8. For me, is my realistic. Like, yeah, there's still that part of we've got stars, anything could happen. And I'm not going to kill that dream. I'm a fan. I still think we can win the flag because why not? But realistically, we win this game, then it's okay. Top 4 could genuinely be on if that form could continue and it can be the catalyst of us starting to build. And I think that's where then the view on those 3 remaining games, it becomes, well, we've potentially got 2 wins out of 2 games we put down as losses. I don't want to drop a game then out of those. I want to win all 3 or at worst only lose one of them. Instead of it being let's win 3, lose 2, it's 4-1 is the minimum. Pretty much should be 5-0. So I think that's what a win does for me.
Yeah.
And I think it just gives everyone so much more confidence that, okay, this isn't just a one-off week kind of thing. So the inverse of that, Lockie, if we don't manage to get the win, where does that leave us?
Well, yeah, we're not expected to win this game in terms of what the bookies have. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a really hard question to answer because, yeah, we looked at this stretch of games and we kind of hoped that we would get one of the Cats and Crows. So I'm not going to overreact to a loss. But, yeah, like I said, I feel like this feels like a bit of a turning point game where if we can win, it propels us, and if we lose, it's more of a plateau, not a dive.
We're still scratching where it maybe starts to get our head above water a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very similar to you. I don't think it changes too much if we lose. Obviously, the performance is what it's all about, and depending on what that is, can change your mood completely. But it's been about where we are at the bye. 100%. As far as the negative part of my mind is gone. So a loss I'm not going to overreact to at all. But team changes, Lockie, this is big because we're forced to make some finally, which isn't a good thing. But Sauce injured for 1 to 2. Williams, I think it's 3 to 4 with his calf. Now, are you just making 2 changes? Are you dropping a guy like Akers? Is there anyone else's form that you see is a bit patchy? What are your ins for those 2? And then on top of that, how is your backline matching up? Because they've got 3 talls and it looks like they're all playing, which is disappointing. That's the focal point of their attack. Walker, Fogarty. Is it Fogarty or Fogarty? I don't know how you pronounce their man's one. Big Fog. And then Riley Thilthorpe down there.
Yeah.
How do we go about it? What are your changes this week?
Yeah, I definitely think Young has to come in to the back line. Regardless of whether Fogarty gets up from his test or not, I think it makes sense. We want McGovern and Haynes to not have to be as accountable to certain, to individuals, which they would have to be if we didn't bring someone in to replace Sauce. So that's pretty straightforward to me. Fingers crossed Fogarty doesn't get up. He's almost in the Ben Keys. Not on the same level.
Yeah.
But every time he plays against us, I'm like, gee, that guy's bloody good. And then other times I'll watch him and I'm like, what are we worried about? So I assume you agree with me with Young in. But I do not have a clear perspective on how we replace Williams in this forward line. I got plenty of names and none of them get me excited, to be honest.
Well, yeah, talk me through a few of them and what I guess they could possibly bring to the table.
Well, you look at guys that you think would play a similar role and similar style. Someone like Francis Evans potentially could be kind of like a connector in the forward line and someone who we've seen this year already. Doherty is not the same player, but he's probably the closest to being like a best 23 player in a role. But I don't really just love the idea of putting him down in the forward line. And then there's a lot of youth that are kind of going around the VFL at the moment, like the Camporellis, Binns and Moya, guys who, we're really not sure whether they're ready for the level or not.
Would you be looking to bring Cooper Lord into the team as not the sub, or where do you see him at the moment?
Oh, I'm extremely conflicted with him. I don't think I'd want to see him playing a full game forward.
Because he's kind of been that split in the game he did play full time, and then every time he's come on, he's been a bit high half forward, and then a couple of centre bounces.
I'm going to get the numbers up.
Do you think
now,
he can be the
very,
sub for
very
like the
few
fourth time?
Centre bounces. I don't know if I'd be shocked. I don't know if I want it. I don't know. I just don't see him as being impactful enough in that role at this stage. I feel like it's either he didn't have any centre bounces, it looks like, in this game against Geelong, and only a couple against North. So if we're not going to play him in the centre bounces,
I agree.
Don't love it.
No, I agree. I think
take it away.
There's a lot of things you can do. None of them excite me. There's only one move that I like, but I equally almost have such a negative against what it can do. And that is Lockie Cowan comes in for Zach Williams to play in defense. Ollie Hollands then pushes up to that wing half forward kind of rotation with Walsh can play a bit more of that. Cottrell can then also go a little bit more forward as well. Because I don't really want Evans. I don't think Moyer's at that point just yet. Doherty makes sense. Had a good game in the twos, but is that the perfect role for him? I'm undecided. The only issue I think with my move is if Sauce was in there, I'd probably make that move. But now all of a sudden you're making two changes to a backline that was really cohesive, was our best thing, is why we're ranked so highly in all those key areas. Is that going to dismantle things a little bit too much? I know the heat's gone to Ollie Hollands quite a bit from a lot of fans in his role right now. Many are saying he shouldn't be playing at halfback. We need to play him on the wing or in the twos. So if you're looking at that, I think that gets him out of there for Cowan, which is maybe if you're losing, the fact that Adelaide play with three talls and we're having to then play a Gov or Haynes a little bit taller than we'd like, it allows a taller player like Cowan as well to be in there who's a little bit more defensive to maybe help intercept where maybe Ollie can't play that role as much. But yeah, I don't love anything.
I like it.
It's probably the one I like the most.
Me too. You've talked me into that. I think that's the play. As always, do you think that's what they will do? I always like hearing what you think will happen.
I think it'll be Young in and Doherty in. And do they keep going Cooper Lord as the sub? Maybe you go something crazy and give Ben Camporelli a debut as the sub.
In Adelaide. Ooh,
over in South Australia.
Feels kind of right.
There's something in that, I think.
I don't
mind
because
he can kind of play a bit of that forward mid role to a degree. I don't think he's perfect for it. He definitely should be playing more midfield. And ideally, I'd just like him to keep developing all season, not have to come into the AFL system. But he has been playing some good football. So maybe you give him a little bit of a taste for 1 or 2 weeks. But let me know your changes if you're watching or listening to this in the YouTube comments, or if you're listening in audio form over on the socials at Navy Blue Corner. The positive, Lockie, is that Adam Cerra has escaped suspension. Our lawyers, yet again, proving they're the best in the business. I believe there was a bit of a stat that no decisions at the tribunal had been overturned this season. And all it took was one Carlton player, and all of a sudden we've changed that. So this has also been a bit contentious, so I kind of want to get your thoughts a bit on the AFL at the moment before we wrap up this episode. Did you have any thoughts on the Cerra incident to start with, and then maybe what's going on with some of these suspensions?
Yeah, the Cerra one never deserved a week, in my view. I don't think that that's biased of me to suggest that. It seems neutrals would agree. Yeah, more questions than answers from me. I think the big one that we've all been talking about in our circles is the Watson tackle versus the Curtis tackle, and how similar they are, and with a different result, and how much that result impacts the tackler. It's tough.
It's a strange time in the AFL. They're getting a lot of heat, and someone like Laura Kane comes out and talks, and you're not getting great answers and gets slammed again. And yeah, it's making our potential mid-season fixing the AFL video looking a lot nicer to be producing, and maybe a bit easier for us to bring these answers up. But yeah, the Cerra one, never a week. It shocked me completely. There has been a bit of talk around maybe a bit of an adductor late in that game with Cerra. Doesn't feel like anything's been spoken about, so I'm assuming he's all clear. If Cerra was not available for whatever reason, is it as simple as just Cooper Lord takes that spot?
I guess in theory, Doc would be another option.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd be happy giving Lord a full game in there, particularly if he's going to be a CBA mid, like we said. I feel a lot better about that.
Yeah, beautiful. But that is pretty much going to wrap up this episode. It's been a long one. It's been a great one. Recapping a big win against Geelong. The season starts to feel like it is building up to something positive now. The hope is back. And I don't want to go negative on this to wrap up the episode, but it kind of gives you a little bit of positivity that if you do lose one, well, the season's not over, which it felt like for quite some time. We were one loss away from catastrophe. Now, all of a sudden, we're a win away from being in the 8 and starting to be a proper contender this season. God, it's good to say that. And it doesn't feel like I'm going overboard with it either. We will be back next week to recap the Adelaide game, which will put us, hopefully, in that 5th spot on the ladder. Let us know your thoughts to everything that we have covered in this episode. We always want to hear from you guys. Up the bloody baggers. See you guys next time.